Good evening and welcome to this webinar on kitchen witchery, using herbs for spiritual and magical uses. I just want to thank you so much for joining me for this webinar. I know that it is July 4th and there are a ton of different activities happening around the country. So I'm just really grateful that you decided to join me for this webinar today. Just to give you some background on myself, my name is Darasia Selby-Adebisi. I am the owner of Stay Woke Healing Arts, which is a holistic wellness company that focuses on supporting people in finding their potential and then giving people really helpful ways to manifest that potential in the real world. So I am initiated as a priestess in the Yoruba, Ifa, and Lukomi traditions. I am a spiritualist. I support people in connecting with ancestors and spirit guides for guidance and healing. I am also an astrologer, and I do tarot readings, and I also am a life coach and a hypnotherapist. So that is a little bit of background on me. And so now we'll jump right into the presentation. So just to go over our agenda tonight, the first thing I wanted to do was just welcome you all. So again, thank you so much for being here. I wanted to review how to make magic very simple. So I know sometimes people think that magical rituals can be very complicated, but this evening what I want to do is I just want to help you to see that magic is really simple and it's something that you can incorporate with ease in your everyday life. I then want to review some magical concepts and some herbal considerations. Then we'll talk about some really simple herbs that you can use for magical ritual. And then you will leave the webinar tonight with some really simple spiritual bath recipes that you can actually do tonight right after the webinar. So I'm really hoping that this will be something that's very helpful for you. And please do let me know at the end. I'm going to have all of my contact information. So please let me know if this is helpful for you. Let me know if there are other webinars that you would like me to do in the future as well. So the first thing I want to cover is just really to show you that magic is really, really simple. So whenever you're doing any kind of magical or spiritual ritual, the first thing that you want to do is you want to have some cleansed space. Now, some people use altars. Some people have dedicated spaces in a room that they may use for magical ritual. Whenever I'm doing any kind of spiritual bath recipes, I usually use my kitchen counter. So any space that you want to use for magical work is really appropriate, but you always want to make sure that you cleanse the space first. So I will review with you some ways that you can cleanse space, and some of you may already have some ways that you do that, but it's always important to make sure that that is what you start with. The next thing that you want to start with is you want to have a representation of the four elements. So I'm going to explain a little bit later why that's important, but the four elements are fire, earth, air, and water. And you want to make sure that you have representations of each of those elements before you do any magical or spiritual ritual. The third thing you're going to need is intention. And I would say that intention is probably the most important ingredient whenever you're doing any magical or spiritual work. You can have all the elements, you can have a cleansed space, you can have all the ingredients, but if you don't have a clear intention and if you are not entering your ritual with clarity and really being grounded in what it is that you want to accomplish, it's going to be really, really difficult to see the results. So you want to make sure that you have a really clear intention on what you're doing, what you want your outcome to be, and you want to just take a moment before you do any ritual and just really center and ground yourself to make sure that you are fully into the ritual, mind, body, and spirit. And then, of course, you're going to need the ingredients. So, the ingredients that you need for the ritual, of course, this webinar is going to be focused on herbs, but you want to make sure that you have all the ingredients you need before you start a ritual. It's very similar to cooking. So, I love watching different chef shows on TV, and they always emphasize how important it is that when you're cooking, you start with all your ingredients so that you're not running around trying to find something to the last minute, and your recipe doesn't turn out the way you want because you weren't fully prepared. So you want to make sure that all the ingredients you want to use are right on hand. And then the last component, I put an asterisk by this because different people use timing differently in rituals. So those of you who are familiar with the moon cycle, we have the new moon, which is usually, that's when the moon is dark. And that's when many people start to do rituals that are about new beginnings and making changes, setting new goals. And then from the time of the new moon to the time of the full moon, the moon is waxing, or it's getting larger and larger each night. So many people like to do rituals during this time that focus on attraction, bringing things into our lives. And then from the time of the full moon to the new moon, the other half of this cycle, the moon is waning, so it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so some people like to do banishing rituals during that time. So some people like to take this into consideration whenever they're doing rituals. Some people like to align their rituals according to the day of the week. I'm not really going to get into that too much on this webinar. If you wanted to look up any information on the magical correspondences of days, if you Google that phrase, you'll be able to find it. You could Google the magical meaning of the days of the week. Some people prefer to do rituals according to that. Generally for me, I do rituals whenever I need to. So if I feel like there's an energy that needs to be banished, I typically don't wait until the waning moon. I kind of just do it, and I trust that, my intention and the work and the prayers that I'm putting into everything will get me the results that I want, and that has always worked for me. So it's important to know how things work for you. If timing is really important, then you definitely want to include that in your ritual. If it's not as important for you, then you don't necessarily have to worry about that. So as I mentioned, cleanse space is really, really, really important. Whenever you are starting any ritual, you want to make sure that the space that you are using is cleansed. And the reason for this is that you don't really want like other energies interfering in the work that you're doing. So obviously, wherever you're deciding to do your rituals, whether it's an altar, whether it's some other dedicated space, whether it's your kitchen counter, you want to make sure it's physically clean. So you don't want to have clutter around. You don't want to have unnecessary things around because it just sort of hampers the energy of your ritual. So you want to make sure it's cleansed, but then you also can use other ingredients, spiritual ingredients, to cleanse your space. So in the picture here, I have a picture of a sage smudge stick. And so sage is a really, really great herb, and we're going to talk about it later as well, because it's a really, really great herb that you can use to cleanse space, and it's also a very, very accessible herb. Many people have that in their kitchen cabinet, and so you can always burn sage. If you can get a smudge stick like this, that's really great. I love smudge sticks because you can cleanse the whole room with it very easily. You can also burn the smoke around you to clear your aura. So smudge sticks are really, really great. If you don't have a smudge stick, but you do have some dry sage in your kitchen cabinet, you also can use that. If you use that, you should use a piece of charcoal, and you should light the charcoal and then put the dry sage on that. Now, the charcoal you would use would not be the charcoal you would use on a grill. It would be a special type of charcoal that is used to burn herbs and incense. So you can find this type of charcoal on at any kind of like new age shop. Any place that you can find a smudge stick, you would probably be able to find charcoal. If you have to go online, if you Google incense charcoal or you go on Amazon, you'll be able to find it, and it's really, really inexpensive. You can burn sage directly, like you can put some dry sage into a fireproof bowl, like the one in the picture, and you can light it and it'll burn, and that's fine, but it doesn't really create a whole lot of smoke, and it kind of burns really quickly. So it's not really that efficient for really cleansing the space because it's really the smoke that cleanses the space. And so sage burnt directly doesn't really give a lot of smoke. And I'm the type of person I kind of like a lot of that smoke around me when I'm cleansing space. So that's not the most effective way. I would definitely say use a smudge stick or you can use charcoal. And then the other ingredient I have here is Florida water. Florida water is what is considered a spiritual cologne. It is used in a lot of different rituals. I actually like to add Florida water to a lot of my spiritual baths. It's a really, really great ingredient. It's not necessarily accessible everywhere. It's used in a lot of rituals that come out of the Caribbean. So the spiritualism that I have been trained in comes out of the Caribbean. So this is why I use it. And I live in Philadelphia, and we have a large Caribbean community. So it's very accessible. I can literally buy this at the dollar store. If you live somewhere where you can't buy Florida water, you can easily order it online. You should be able to order it on Amazon. If you Google it, you should be able to order it. It's not very expensive. Um, I can get it for $1 where I live. If you get it online, it may cost somewhere between $5 and $7, but it should not be more than that. So if someone's trying to sell you Florida water for like $10, $15, definitely look for something cheaper. It is not a really expensive ingredient at all. So moving on to our four elements. So as I mentioned, it's really, really important whenever you're doing any kind of spiritual ritual to incorporate the four elements. The reason why the four elements are so important is because the four elements represent everything that's in existence. So from a spiritual or magical perspective, everything in existence is part and parcel of these elements, whether it's fire, earth, air, or water. It either is that element or it's some mixture of those elements. And so whenever you have representations of those elements in ritual, it's a way of inviting that universal energy into your ritual for help and support. I really love the and having the representation of the elements because I always feel like if there's something I'm missing, if there's some ingredient maybe that I should have used that I didn't use, I feel like having those four elements represented is a way to like cover all of your bases. So maybe you're making a spiritual bath for someone and they feel like things are not very balanced in their life. And the thing that they need, the element that they need is fire. You may not know that, but if you have that fire element there, which is symbolic of inviting that fire element into the space, then it's like that fire element is present in the ritual anyway and will always give you exactly what is needed. And it's really, really easy to represent the four elements. The best way to represent fire is through a candle. I really like white candles because white is a color of purity and clarity. But I mean, you can really use any color if you are familiar with using color in ritual. If you are making like a love bath or doing some type of love ritual, you could use pink. If you are doing something for money, you can use green. So, I mean, you can use any color you want, but white is kind of like that universal color. So that's why I like to use that whenever I am doing any kind of ritual. For the earth element, you can use a crystal, you can use seashells, you can even use a cup of dirt from the front or the back of your house. Anything that represents the earth, you can use that to represent the earth element. And it's really great to think about the elements and their characteristics. So you think about fire is very warming. So you're bringing the energy of fire into your ritual. Earth is very grounded. So you're bringing that grounded energy into your ritual. Air can be represented by incense. Air can even be represented by the smudge stick, like you saw on the previous slide. If you're using a smudge stick to cleanse your space, you can use that same smudge stick to represent that air element, um, as a representation of that element in ritual. And again, air is very elevating. So you're bringing that elevating energy into your ritual. And then with water, you can get a simple glass of water, and that represents the water element. And water is very healing. Water is in many ways clarifying, it's cleansing, and so you're bringing that element in. So you want to make sure you have the four elements represented. Please, please, please make sure you have this. It's so important. And I would even say, if you have an altar, you should always have these four elements on there. It's very, very important as far as bringing in and honoring all aspects of universal energy. So we're going to go over some magical concepts right now. So I already mentioned the four elements and why they're important. The four elements bring everything together in ritual, so you want to make sure you have them. As far as ingredients, so whether you are making a spiritual bath, or doing any kind of spell work or ritual work that has different ingredients in it, you want to make sure that you always use an odd number. The reason why is because even numbers are considered to be passive numbers, and odd numbers are considered to be active numbers. So when you think about any kind of ritual you're doing, whether it's a bath, whether it's candle work, whatever it is that you're doing, the intention is always to create some kind of change. And so, because you want to create some type of change, odd numbers being symbolic of activity, of movement, of transition, you want to bring that energy into your element because you're trying to change something from one state to another state. So, you want to have those odd number of elements. Whenever you're doing any kind of magical work, you want to think about your intention. What is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to accomplish? What is your end result? Most rituals will fall into one of two categories. It's either going to be a cleansing or a banishing ritual. You want to remove something, or it's going to be an attraction ritual. You want to draw something to you. Sometimes, depending on everything that's going on, you may want to use both in a ritual. You may want to start with cleansing and then you want to go into attracting. This is really good, especially if you or someone that you're doing work for is really experiencing a lot of negativity around them. Maybe there's someone they're experiencing a bout of bad luck. It seems like everything that they're trying to do for themselves, nothing is really working really well. So you may want to cleanse and banish first and then do the attraction ritual. So why do we use herbs? Well, just as herbs have properties that impact our physical health, herbs have properties that work towards spiritual and magical intention. Now, on some level, you already know this. So I'm gonna think of an herb that is something that most people are probably familiar with. Let's think about lavender. Okay, so most people know who are familiar with lavender that it is a very, very calming herb. Whether you are burning lavender incense, whether you're burning lavender on a piece of charcoal, whether you are putting lavender essential oil into an oil diffuser, it is a very, very calming herb. Well, magically, it's very calming as well. Lavender is great to use in magical ritual where you're trying to calm, where you're trying to ease, where you're trying to settle, where a person or yourself is needing some more clarity. That's where that's when you would like it's good to use a lavender herb. So in many ways, a lot of times we're already sort of familiar with the magical properties of certain herbs. We don't always think about it in that way. But many times, exactly what um, an herb is used for physically is very similar to how it's used magically. Another example is ginger. So ginger is a very warming herb. A lot of times people will drink ginger tea if they have a cold, or if they just have a lot of mucus or phlegm in their body, and they kind of just want to like get that out, get that moving and out of their system. Well, magically, ginger is the same way. It is a very powerful herb. It amplifies energy, it amplifies spell work, and it makes things move quicker. So, a lot of times, if you think about what the herb does physically, it'll give you some clues and some hints to what it does spiritually and magically. Herbs can often be understood as temperatures, so hot, warm, fiery, spicy, cool, calming, or balancing. So the herbs that we're going to talk about are herbs that we typically use in food. So you have some familiarity with how it tastes, how it feels, how it smells, and that again will give you a hint as to how you would use it spiritually and magically. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So herbal considerations, like I just mentioned, you have herbs that are hot or warm, or some that are more cool. In general, now this is speaking just in general, sometimes you have herbs that deviate from the general norm. But in general, whenever you want to do some type of attraction, whether you want to draw more love, whether you want to draw more money, whether you want to draw more positivity, in general, you use warm herbs for that. In general, whenever you want to calm, whenever you want to ease energy, whenever you want to cleanse energy away, you use cooling herbs for that. Now, that's in general. There are some herbs that are considered hot, like spicy pepper would be one, crushed red peppers, chili peppers. Like if you get some dried chili peppers, or you can use fresh ones as well. Those are considered hot herbs, and those are typically used in situations where there is extreme negativity, and it's like it has to be burned away. Those type of spells and ritual work are called war work. So that's like when people are at war with each other. It kind of falls into the realm of like negative witchcraft, and I'm not covering that in this webinar. Um, there's a time and a place for everything. There are some really, really severe situations where people sometimes they need that. They need to go for that kind of energy. What I prefer to do is start with a gentler energy. If that doesn't work, then moving towards into that really, really hot energy. But you need to always proceed with those in caution, with caution. And I'm not covering that in this webinar. So that can be something for the future. If you're interested, let me know. But it's better to start with herbs that are easier and gentler. And if they get their job done, that's great. And you don't have a lot of like karmic stuff afterwards. So you can think about herbs in terms of their temperature, if they're like hot, warm, or if they're more on the cool side. When using herbs in ritual, you can use fresh or dry herbs. I prefer dry because they don't go bad. Obviously, fresh herbs, if you want to use fresh herbs, you have to use them pretty quickly after you buy them, or they will go bad. So that's why, in general, I prefer to use dry herbs. Whenever you're making any kind of spiritual bath, you can choose to boil the herbs or not. Now, with fresh herbs, you generally don't have to boil them because with the fresh herbs, you can let them sort of soak in water for a day. And generally, the essence of the herb will come out into the water. You'll actually see it because the water will start to change color. Usually, the herbs we're using are green, so you'll see that the water becomes a green color. You can also smash the herb. Sometimes people use like a presser to kind of get the essence of the herb out, and you can use that when you're working with fresh herbs. With dry herbs, it's best to boil the herbs in order to get the essence out. That's another reason that I prefer to use dry herbs, because when you boil them, The essence comes out much more quickly. We usually only have to boil the herbs for about 5 to 7 minutes, and you can definitely see that the water is like a rich green color, or whatever color of the herbs that you're using. So it's really, really great. That's why I like to use dry herbs and to boil them. And then you can always use sunlight or moonlight to enhance your herbal concoction. So the sun is warm, so generally it's best to use that for attraction. The moon is cool, it's best to use that for any type of work, any type of spiritual bath, where you are trying to have more peace or more clarity or more calm, or you're trying to banish or take away negativity. If you are going to use fresh herbs and you're not going to boil them, you're going to let them sit for a day, I would recommend sitting them in sunlight or moonlight to enhance the energy of your concoction. So now we're going to just review some very common kitchen herbs. Basil is one. I really, really love basil. It's an herb that I use a lot. It's a cooling herb. It can be used for cleansing, which is what I normally use it for, but it also can be used for prosperity. Sage, as we mentioned before, is a cooling herb. It cleanses and it removes negative energy. This is why sage is so great as a smudge stick, because when you burn it, that smoke goes all around and it cleanses that negative energy from any space. Cinnamon is a warm herb and it's also a sweet herb. So it is a really great herb to use for love or for money, to draw these things to you. You can use either cinnamon in a powdered form. I really like to use cinnamon sticks though. It's really great to even have them sort of sitting in the bath, even after you have, made it and strained the other ingredients out. Um, to just have the cinnamon stick still sitting in there. Ginger, as I mentioned before, it's a warm herb. It adds power to ritual, and it also quickens and makes things happen more quickly. Um, with ginger, though, you want to just keep it, you want to just use it with warm rituals. So, for instance, if you are making a cooling bath because you want to cleanse or because you want to bring more peace, you wouldn't want to then add ginger into that because you want to have peace more quickly, because it's a warm herb, right? If you're making more of a cooling bath, you want to keep it with just cool herbs. But ginger is really great if you're trying to draw money and you want to draw money quickly, then to add ginger to that to make it move more quickly. um Salt isn't an herb, but because almost everyone has salt and pepper in their kitchen, I wanted to mention these two. Salt is obviously a crystal. It can really be used in warm or cool ritual. When it's used with warm, it's usually used more in like that way that I mentioned before, kind of more in a warring way. Um, and you have to prepare it in certain ways anyway. So it's best to just really use salt and more cooling, cleansing ritual. It is really fantastic for removing negative energy. And then pepper is warm or hot. It removes negative energy, negative people. Again, it's used in more serious cases where there might be a lot of severe negativity, or there might be a person who's causing a lot of negativity. I'm not covering those type of rituals in this webinar, but I did want to mention it because I figured there may be questions about it, because it is so commonly used in kitchens. And then some other kitchen ingredients. You have lemon, which is cleansing. I know that it's not an herb, but it's something that a lot of people have. And if you think about lemon, you see lemon in a lot of different cleansers, whether it's like dish detergent, whether it's like, some type of bathroom cleaner. Lemon is used a lot because it is a really great cleaner. So you can use lemon. You can slice it up and you can use it in different spiritual work. If you dry it, you can grind it up and then use it in different spiritual work. Lemon peel, like lemon zest, is actually more warming than cooling, and so you could use it in some warming baths as well. Both honey and sugar are very common ingredients that people have in their kitchen. Both of them are sweeteners, so they can be used in love rituals. They can be used if you're ever trying to maybe have favor in the workplace and you're doing some type of ritual work. You can use honey or ginger, or I'm sorry, honey or sugar. Peppermint is an herb that can be cool or warm. Um, well, let me go back a little bit. I put peppermint, lavender, and chamomile on this slide instead of the other one because even though they're herbs, they're not really herbs that people typically buy in whole form. So if you go to most supermarkets and you look for, you go on the aisle where you have the herbs and the spices, you typically don't see like dry peppermint or dry lavender or dry chamomile. However, particularly for peppermint and chamomile, people usually do have them in their homes in the form of tea. So if you have a peppermint tea or a chamomile tea, you can just cut open the tea bag and you can use that dry herb in ritual work. Just to make sure that it's only peppermint or it's only chamomile. But most of the times, if you get a peppermint tea or a chamomile tea, it is 100% peppermint and chamomile. So you can just cut open that tea bag and you can use it in ritual. So to go back to peppermint, it could be used in cooling or warming rituals. It is a very protective herb, but then it also brings prosperity. Lavender is not an herb that people typically buy whole unless they're getting it in tea. Um, there are some lavender teas that are on the market that are just lavender. Sometimes they are mixed with some other things, and so um, you just have to make sure it's only lavender. However, a lot of times with lavender tea, if it is mixed with other herbs, most of those herbs are usually cooling because lavender tea is usually meant to calm people before they go to sleep at night. So if you have a lavender tea that's mixed with other herbs, you can probably just look those herbs up and see if they would be good for your ritual. And then chamomile, as most people know, is a very cooling, calming herb. People a lot of times will drink this before sleeping at night to help them sleep. And so you can use it for calming rituals. It's also a pretty good cleanser. You can use it for cleansing rituals, and it also can be used to draw money. So whenever you're making a spiritual bath, you want to first make sure that your space is cleansed. As I referred to before, you want to make sure it's physically and spiritually cleansed. Then you want to set up your elements. So you want to make sure that you have a representation of fire, of earth, of air, and of water. And then you want to verbalize your intention. Verbalize your intention to the universe. Really center and ground your intention. Make sure you're clear about what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're trying to achieve. Then obviously you're going to get your water as well as all of your other ingredients. You want to have them ready. If you're going to just use cool water, you'll want to put it into a basin of some sort. If you're not going to boil the water, have it in some sort of basin that the water and the herbs will be able to sit in together so that the essence of the herb can come out into the water. If you are going to boil your water, then you can just get a simple kitchen pot. I like to use the same pot over and over again. Like I have a pot that I use just for making spiritual baths. I don't use it for anything else. So if you think that you are going to be making spiritual baths often, um, you may want to just have like one dedicated pot for that. Then you're going to add your ingredients, whatever ingredients you're using that are aligned with your intention. And then you're going to pray over your bath once again, praying for whatever it is that you want for yourself or whatever it is that you want for whomever you're making it for. And you just want to pray with a clarity and with a strength and a certainty as you do the ritual. If you are boiling the water, as I mentioned before, you only have to let it boil for about 5 to 7 minutes. What I like to do is I like to boil the water, get it to a nice boil, put the herbs in, and then let them still kind of boil all together for about 5 to 7 minutes. Then You will let your water cool. Or if you're not using boiling water, you want to allow it to sit for at least a day to really soak up the essence of the herbs. Again, you may want to have it sit in either the sunlight or the moonlight. Then, after your bath is complete, you can bottle it and you have to use it sometime in the next 3 days. Now, if you want to have a bath that lasts longer than 3 days, you can put your bath in a jar where it will be about half of your bath of your herbal concoction, and then the other half you will want to put 100 proof vodka or some kind of 100 proof liquor. I prefer to use vodka. I like the way that it works with the bath that I make, but you can experiment and you can use whatever type of alcohol you want to use to preserve your bath, but it does need to be 100 proof. And so then I wanted to share with you some simple bath recipes for a simple cleansing bath. You can use salt, lemon, and sage. Those are really great ingredients to use for cleansing, and it feels really, really good. You feel really, really cleansed and centered after using this kind of bath. So it's great. For love attraction, you can use honey, you can use sugar. I didn't mention this before, but you can use dry rose petals, you can use cinnamon, you can use ginger. Things that are sweet, things that sort of remind you of love and sweetness, those are the things that you can use with in making a love attraction bath. If you wanted to make a calming bath, you can use basil, lavender, and chamomile. Sometimes people like to add milk to their baths to make what's called a white bath. You can use different types of milk, and then you can use white flower petals in that. I'm not a big fan of milk baths. I don't like the idea of bathing in milk. It's just something mental for me. I just don't like it. But some people really love it. So if that's what you want to do, you can do that as well. And then for money drawing, you can use cinnamon, chamomile, or basil. To actually take a bath, a spiritual bath, you want to make sure that you cleanse your body first, so that the bath is the last thing that's on you. You can either sit in the bath for 20 minutes. So what I'll normally do is maybe take a quick shower, cleanse my physical body, and then prepare the bath. Just run bath water. You can run it at a normal temperature that you would like. I honestly, if I want to do a cooling bath, I try to make the bath a little cooler. If it's a warming bath, I make it a little warmer. But you really can have it at any temperature you want. You pour the bath in it, and then you can sit in it for about 15 to 20 minutes. You also can just pour the bath over you in a shower. Once you're done actually showering, soaping, rinsing off, you can just pour the bath over you. You don't necessarily have to pour it over your head. You can just pour it kind of like neck down. You can have it in a pitcher, and you just pour it over you, and then you can just state your intention again as you're pouring the bath over you. So that's it for the webinar today. I hope that this was really helpful for you. If you have any questions at all, you can feel free to email me at darasia@staywokehealingarts.com. And then you can also visit my website, www.staywokehealingarts.com. You can subscribe to the newsletter. I write different blogs about spiritual rituals, magical rituals. So you can visit the blog, you can read more, you can subscribe, you can get it delivered right into your inbox. And I'm also on Facebook. You can look me up, Darasia Selby, IDBC, or you can look up Stay Woke Healing Arts. I'm also on Twitter, and I'm also on Instagram under Darasia Selby, or Stay Woke Healing Arts. You'll be able to find me either way. So thank you so much for joining me this evening. Again, I really appreciate it. If you have any ideas for future webinars, please feel free to send those ideas to me. Thank you so much again. Talk to you soon and be blessed.